These videos are strictly only for entertainment and educational purposes. I do not encourage or endorse to any of the behaviors of the people I am talking about in my videos. Jim Beaumont woke up at sunrise. A nice breeze swept in through the windows and cooled him off after the hot night. The summer of 1966 was really hot in Somerton, Australia. It was in the middle of the summer holidays, and today was also the official National Day of Australia. Jim was drinking his morning coffee on the porch looking out at the ocean. This was also the time when the little kids started waking up. Jane, who was the oldest at 9 years old, was, as usual, first up. Little sister Arna, 6 years old, came a little later when she noticed that her sister was not in bed anymore. But little brother Grant stayed in bed as long as usual. The mother Nancy was cracking eggs and whipping up scrambled eggs when the phone rang. It was Jim's business partner who said that Jim had to come in for a meeting that day. It wasn't too much to ask for, even though it was the National Day. The family only had his salary to live on. Jim tried to explain to his wife, who tried to be understanding, but got in a pretty bad mood. She thought it didn't feel good at all when he got in the car and drove off to meet his partner. As the sun rose, it became increasingly hot. This was one of those days when everyone went to the beach. The Beaumont siblings had been playing alone there for a couple of weeks, since school ended at Christmas time. Here in the southern half of the globe, summer begins in December and doesn't end until the ice melts in the northern countries of the globe. Nancy herself had no desire to be at the beach, but she didn't have the heart to demand the children to stay home either. She called out to the eldest daughter, Jane, who was given 8 shillings and a few pence for bus tickets and coffee. Nancy made sure that they would be home at 12 and the children would take the same bus back. Jane promised that it would be fine and scurried off with the little siblings. They walked down to Harding Street 100 yards from the house to catch the bus to Glenelg Beach. Nancy was proud of her oldest daughter. Jane was always so talented, young, and with a sense of responsibility for her surroundings. She would surely be something very special when she grew up, Nancy thought. Nancy herself went over to the neighbors to gossip and drink coffee, but she made sure to be home when the children would return on the bus. At 12 o'clock, she stood by the mailbox and looked down at the bus station at Harding Street. The bus arrived, but no children got off. At least, not any of hers. Nancy was a bit worried, but went in the house and cleaned for a while until the next bus came at 1 o'clock. But her young children didn't get off there either. Now she was really getting worried. When the 3 children did not arrive on the 2 following buses either, she started to panic. At this time, Jim came home from his meeting, and when he was told that the children were still not back, he was shocked. Jim threw himself into the car and drove straight to the beach to search for his children. Nancy searched the area at home. None of the parents found the slightest trace of their children, and at 7 in the evening they called the police. The officers took the concern seriously and immediately gathered a search patrol that searched the beach from its western to its eastern side. It was a horrifying night for the parents. By the time the sun rose the following morning, all of Australia had celebrated its National Day, except the Beaumonts and the Somerton police. The police thoroughly searched the beach and all its surroundings. Out in the sea, the Coast Guard searched for traces, but they found nothing. It was as if the 3 children had suddenly just wiped off from the face of the earth. Soon the news also leaked to the press. The major newspapers, not only Australian but also British and American, booked first-class seats at the airport in Adelaide to be able to report on what happened. The local people of Somerton frantically searched for the 3 children. The police went through anyone who might have something to say about what could have happened to the children. Soon the testimonies began to trickle in. First, it was a kiosk owner on the beach who told the police that the kids had come in to buy candy and a meat pie at 12:15. They paid with a £1 bill. Mother Nancy was confused, considering her children had no money for that, and what would they do with a pie? It was difficult to get the children to eat because they were picky eaters and certainly never ate meat pies. The kiosk owner also thought it was strange because he knew the children and they used to always stand and play with their small coins, which were then always invested in sweets. A woman who had been sunbathing on a lawn behind the large pier that divides the beach called. There the 3 siblings had been playing with a water sprinkler. The lady had seen how a 35-year-old man was lying on a towel and looking at the children. Suddenly he had stood up and walked over to them. There had been a lot of people moving, and the lady had then lost them. postman Joe Thompson had also seen them at about the same time. He said they seemed happy and playing just like usual. The Beaumont children were known by all the locals. They were kind and always happy, but also polite. This was at a time when small Australian communities like Somerton did not lock the doors at night and let young children take the bus themselves. But this illusion of security would now change overnight. Jim and Nancy were beside themselves and called a press conference. The parents pleaded in front of the media to a potential kidnapper to give back their children. They missed their children. Australia felt for the Beaumont's parents. No kidnapper contacted them, however. A very interesting piece of information came in. Shortly after 12 o'clock, a woman had seen the children walking down the beach with a middle-aged man. She had seen how the man had helped the children get dressed, and how the three of them then sat politely and waited while the man went to a changing stall to change himself. The witness thought it seemed strange. She thought the children were old enough to dress themselves. A person who is used to children understands such things. Nancy was very skeptical about the information at first. Her Jane was shy and would never let a stranger help her with something so personal. But then she remembered something her youngest daughter, Arna, had said a few days earlier. That Jane had a boyfriend at the beach. The police then understood that the children must have known the perpetrator for some time. Surely he had played with them on the beach and carefully planned the abduction. The crime was well thought out without anyone suspecting anything, including the children themselves and their parents, who were blissfully unaware of the danger before it was too late. The Sunday Times in Sydney called in a retired cop, Spencer Kelly, to see if he could solve the case. But Kelly only stayed one day. He noticed that there were not enough leads to solve the case. A final, desperate solution came from an Adelaide businessman. He called in the Dutch psychic Gerhard Croiset to search for the children. He had previously found children who had disappeared in Europe. Gerhard would search everywhere. First, Gerhard pointed to a tunnel of sewer pipes and had them dug up. But no children were found there. Then after that, he was sure they were under a concrete floor near the area. The police protested for it to be dug up. The floor had been laid weeks before the children disappeared. But Gerhard didn't care, and the floor got broken up. But there was nothing there either. Although, 2 search dogs marked on 2 different occasions in the exact same place, but still no remains. The leads ran out and Somerton went back to his usual self, with the case still being unsolved. Then suddenly, 2 years after the children's disappearance, a letter arrived at Jim and Nancy's home that was signed to Jane. According to the letter, the children were being held captive by a man who was now going to return the children to them. The parents were overjoyed. But police in Somerton said they had to be careful. The kidnapper demanded that the police do not get involved, but it was still decided to set a trap to catch the kidnapper. A couple of weeks later, the exchange was supposed to take place in the city of Victoria in Queensland. The local police were not notified due to the risk of the entire operation being leaked. But someone in the police back home in Somerton had still let the press know everything, so journalists had already started to gather. Jim was standing outside the post office in town at 8 in the morning, waiting. A plainclothes policeman tried to look like he was out for a morning walk but was walking around looking for the perpetrator. Suddenly the door to the post office opened and a woman came out. She told him that there had been a call to Jim saying that he needs to wait and that the man would come any moment. Jim stood there until 3 o'clock. Several times the woman came out with a message from the man. He was coming soon. But no one showed up and Jim had to go home without his children. It all turned out to be a joke made by a 17-year-old. Forensic technicians in Sydney managed to trace back to him through the handwriting on the letter. He was deeply remorseful for what he had done, and also managed to escape prosecution. And here is where all the leads ended. Nancy and Jim tried to live together, but it didn't work out, and the couple went their separate ways, lonely and grieving on their own path in life. Nancy passed away at the age of 92 in 2019, and Jim passed away at the age of 97 in 2023. In the investigation surrounding the disappearance of the Beaumont children, there have been several suspected serial killers and sex offenders over the years. 2 suspects were Alan McIntyre and Arthur Monroe. On the day the Beaumont siblings disappeared, Alan McIntyre had promised his son to accompany him and his friend Arthur Monroe to the beach. But at the last moment, the son changed his mind. When Alan and Arthur returned in the afternoon, the son saw the two men standing covered in blood by the car and banging their hands on the trunk. Arthur Monroe was later in life convicted of several counts of pedophilia. Another suspect was Arthur Brown. He was one of the hottest leads according to the police. He owned a blue Vauxhall car with a different colored door, which witnesses had identified in several child abductions in the Somerton area. Brown fits the depiction of the unknown man that was seen with the kids, and he also has no alibi. The Adelaide Crown Prosecution Service charged him in 1988. Everything seemed watertight, and the evidence was overwhelming. But Brown turned out to be old and very sick, so the trial had to be stopped. Brown died in 2002 at the age of 90. Another suspect was James Ryan O'Neill, a criminal multitasker. O'Neill was a gun dealer in Melbourne's underworld. In 1975, he was arrested for the murder of a young boy. He is still in prison for this. The police in Australia are quite sure that he is behind more disappearances of children and young people. He may have been in the Somerton area on 26 January 1966. Another suspect is Bevan Spencer van Einem. Bevan Spencer van Einem was behind the high-profile murder of 15-year-old Richard Calvin and is considered by the police to be a suspect in several child murders in Australia. He may have been in the Adelaide area at the time of the children's disappearance. He also fits well with the phantom images. Van Einem is alive and still in prison for the murder. Another suspect is Derek Percy. Percy was 17 when the Beaumont siblings disappeared. He was in the Navy and visited the area around Somerton. He was later arrested for the brutal murder of a young girl and sentenced to life in prison. Percy was described by prison staff as a real-life Hannibal Lecter. He was super intelligent, played chess, and skillfully manipulated his surroundings. He died in prison in 2009. The Beaumont siblings disappeared into thin air. To this day, there is not a trace of the young children that was playing on the beach on January 26, 1966. Thank you for watching this video. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe for more. See you next time. Bye.